YouTube. I'm in the grounds of a hotel where President Obama and various other of the G7 leaders came for a summit, and it's really lovely in there. I've been in there a few times. Anyway, one thing I found very difficult to understand when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses was just how the worldly went about conducting research and how intelligent people could be so foolish as to not believe the governing body. This mentally destructive cult depends on destroying rationality and inducing ignorance in their members. They do this by spreading mind-deadening and fear-inducing stories like demons living in toys and arousal causing cancer. Combine this with taking scientific sources out of context or using fake authority figures to support the position they've already decided upon. It's no wonder that for years after leaving, I just bumped along with no curiosity about how the improvements in technology came about, or how science dared to contradict the creation account. Remember, my mind had been polluted from childhood with stories of Jehovah whittling individual snowflakes as a sign of his continued creation. Basically, just existing was passed off as proof of their claims. The first thing I had to learn was to clear my head and stop what I call magical, incoherent thinking. I had to get a university education and learn how to think and how to contribute to the growth in human knowledge and information. And this quest brought me directly to the scientific method, and it was only then I could understand why and how the educated objected to the claims of our favourite cult. And it was only then I realised why the Jehovah's Witnesses fought so hard to discourage my education, and why they had put pressure on my parents to not support my educational aims. In brief terms, this is what I learned. We are all entitled to an opinion on any subject. We are entitled to believe it too. But opinions or beliefs are equally worthless unless it goes through the scientific method to elevate that worthless opinion into something that can be promoted or taught with confidence. Remember, there are 1 billion plus people with the opinion that they'll get loads of virgin sex if they kill themselves and non-believers with them. And there's people who believe that dead nerves and dead brain cells can be caused to experience pleasure or suffer eternally. Also, there are plenty that believe that Elvis and Tupac Shakur are alive and well and living among us. It's only the scientific method that allows us to discern opinion and rumour from something serious and worthy of officially repeating. But before I explain what the scientific method is, there was another obstacle to learning I had to root out from my Jehovah's Witness childhood. As Jehovah's Witnesses, we're all conditioned to respect authority figures, regardless of the merit of their instruction or direction. We are taught to mindlessly obey and believe, like good sheep, anything the authority figure says. And as a witness, we are presented with many unchallengeable authorities. Jesus, the governing body, elders, the Bible, circuit overseers, etc. But science doesn't work like that. It's not important who says something, it's important what they say, and everything is subject to challenge by anyone in the search for truth. This realization is just so freeing. My opinion was suddenly as valuable as any teacher's. I just had to support my view with evidence. And I had never experienced anything like it before. I wouldn't be disfellowshipped for having an opinion that differed. I would not be disciplined or marked. I just had to honestly support my opinion with evidence, and I would be heard. We all know what science means, but the method is how knowledge is arrived at and accepted as better than opinion or hypothesis. There is also the issue of the use of the word theory. Did you know gravity is a theory? There is the indisputable fact that unsupported objects fall to the earth. The theory is why the object falls. This is why gravity, evolution, germs, and atomics, and many others will always remain theories. But in order for a theory to be called a theory, it must have predictive power, and the proposer must also indicate the weaknesses in his proposal. Another wonderful thing about science working this way is that it allows for greater understanding over time, so that maybe in future we could selectively control and manipulate specific instances of gravity in the same way we control and manipulate specific atoms. And this was another shock for me, the humility of science. In the cult I grew up in, knowledge was always certain and unchallengeable. The Bible says it, I believe it, and that's it. And in that short sentence is arrogance in ignorance, perfectly expressed. It's a closed mind, just as the cult wants. When has this cult ever offered the members the method or even the opportunity to falsify one of their claims? Even to think of it is to think of losing your family. But in science, when a theory that explains a fact is proposed, it is submitted to peer review. In other words, competitor experts have infinite time to pick the theory to pieces. The scientific community is incentivized to prove a theory wrong, because the proposer becomes rich from grants, consultancies, speaking tours, publishing, prizes, celebrity and patents, if the theory cannot be falsified. So you can see why it may be fun for some to just debunk everything they can. But science is humble, because even if something cannot be proved wrong quickly, it remains there for future generations to pick apart, debunk, and create their own better theory, and therefore scoop the rewards. This process keeps science honest and learning. If there are errors, they will be discovered and exposed, which is the exact opposite of religion. Evolution has been through the meat grinder of peer review for about 150 years without substantive change, certainly less change than our favourite cult. There have been details in the theory that have required modification because of the emergence of information that was unavailable to Darwin. But the original discovery is an undisputable fact. What we learn of more over time is the how, and it is in the very same way that people developed and improved on the work of the Wright brothers, because we needed their basic plane in order to understand, improve and build the machines we have now, and the better ones that will come later. We go from mud huts to skyscrapers, from sundials to atomic clocks, on the backs of theories honed and sharpened over time. Jehovah's Witnesses and other fundamentalist religions deny evolution by ignoring evidence, misquoting unattributed figures, taking quotes out of context, confusing the meaning of the word theory, exaggerating the significance of errors or dead ends, and generally being dishonest and seeking to confuse and blur what the actual evidence is. They claim the high ground whilst not submitting their beliefs or claims to the process that keeps claims honest. This cult and other religions such as Islam, Mormons and loads more all claim an impossible monopoly and certainty on truth, yet refuse to be tested. Instead, they threaten your life and lobby politically to bypass any form of fact-checking, so they can pass their worthless but profitable opinions off as fact to the general public. For example, Jesus makes a simple claim of knowledge. If I drink deadly poison whilst having faith in him, he will reverse its effect and keep me alive. If I pray, my faith will move mountains. The scientific process would test those claims and discard them, saying it does not meet the standard of evidence to be taught to the public. But religion, depending on the sect, would dishonestly ignore these obviously false claims and try to sell the bits they're not embarrassed about, or say that everything Jesus said is perfect, infallible and true, except for where he was joking. Science has higher standards than that, and because Jesus or any authority figure said it, does not automatically make it true. Yet religion claims the high ground whilst distorting the facts to make everything Jesus reportedly did and say appear perfect. But whilst our fundamentalist cult dishonestly does everything it can to deny evolution, in the face of overwhelming evidence, it does this whilst claiming that 4,000 years ago, 2 dogs came out of the ark and created more than the 1,000 distinct breeds we have today. Isn't that evolution on steroids? Or is Jehovah still creating fully formed animals from the dust of the earth? In the same way, I was told he created snowflakes. The claims this cult fights and lies to support are clearly false, and scaring us out of our thinking minds is the only way for them to keep it going. I am so glad this cult and other fundamentalists are fading out. They will no longer be able to hold back progress and prolong the Dark Age by closing minds. A world run by them would have us treating skin conditions by splashing the blood of sacrificed birds and praying. They would have enforced worship and wholesale fear of demon-infested objects. They would execute people for their sexuality and their fancy book learning. If they had it their way, we would live worse than ancient Afghanistan, and anyone that suggested there might be a better way of doing anything, or improving human knowledge or the human condition, in contradiction to their ancient book, would be slaughtered with the courage of Jehu. To support my opinion, just look at present-day Jehovah's Witness literature, with its talk of mentally diseased non-believers, Jehu and the demand for blind obedience. Then compare that to the Islamic states we have today, and how Christendom acted before the Western secular world shackled religion. It was only when the power of religion was restricted that the Dark Age ended. Only then an accepted cause for torture and genocide stopped, and people began to grow intellectually. How many people has science tortured and killed for having a different thought? I truly regret my lost youth to this destructive cult, and I apostatize because it's my moral duty to warn others of the harm and damage they are inflicting on themselves by having any contact with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses take your mind by infusing it with fear. They put your body at risk with their ever-changing medical instructions. They take the safety of your children with their 2-witness rule. They take your time, money and individuality with their oppression backed with fear of divine murder. They take your spouse and relationships by telling you in detail who you can talk to and how your relationships are to be conducted, right down into the bedrooms of the married. It's time they were stopped before they take us back to the Stone Age and create a society with a level of power that the old hated dictators could only dream of.